Hi, my name's Nelson. I'm starting the self-advocate presentation now. So you want to take a seat, please?
Thank you so much for joining. So Nelson is our Self-Advocate Council representative from Community Living Toronto.
Yep.
And my name is Michelle. I'm one of the facilitators for the Self-Advocates Council at Community Living Toronto.
And I've been a member for the Self-Advocate Council a number of years now. And it doesn't seem to stop.
That's right.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Tara Bates. I'm a facilitator at Community Living Toronto at a drop-in center that we run. And I'm also a facilitator with the Self-Advocates Council.
Excellent. So again, thank you for joining. This is exciting. It's the first time that we're talking about a meeting that the Self-Advocate Council had with the Toronto Police Service. And it was
To help people, to help Toronto Police Services, to help us to understand them and vice versa.
Exactly. So the theme of this coming together was working together, people with intellectual disabilities, helping the Toronto Police serve us better.
Yeah.
Excellent. And so this slide, Nelson, is who we are, and there's a great picture of you on
And
here.
this slide explains what we are and what we do for Community Living Toronto.
And Nelson, can you expand a little bit on what the Self-Advocates Council does?
We help people who cannot speak for themselves through the agency to have a voice.
That's very well put.
Yep.
And it's made up of elected members, so every 2 years there's an election.
Every
and
June and every 2 years.
every June, every 2 years.
Yeah.
And it's elected by your peers.
Yep.
And we also have monthly meetings that take place with all of the self-advocates. Sorry, I keep forgetting to stand up. We have monthly meetings that take place where the self-advocates discuss issues that they're interested in. So we make up an agenda for the year and we meet monthly.
Yep.
So this slide is just kicking off the discussion about how the Self-Advocates Council met with the Toronto police officers. That was on June 27th of this year. And Nelson,
And
can you explain a little more?
And honestly, all the self-advocates, including me, was nervous because we learned from a couple police officers we didn't get treated very well with dignity and respect. And we tried to make it better for all of us who have physical disabilities and mental disabilities, and try to explain to the Toronto Police Department, treat us like humans, not circus animals.
Right, so what the self-advocates decided was that because of some issues that they had experienced in the past, they were interested in meeting with the Toronto Police to form a partnership between the Self-Advocates Council and the Toronto Police. And it was all their idea behind arranging this. So you deserve all the credit for that, Nelson.
And honestly, and most of us, including myself, was honestly nervous because I don't know how the Toronto Police Department was acting towards us. And after we met them for an hour or so, we broke the barrier down a bit and noticed we all human and we all make mistakes.
Right.
Breaking down barriers is a really good way to put it. And then some. I feel like you guys all hung out for hours after the talk ended.
We hanged out for at least 1 hour after, and then and we all took pictures.
And this was one of them.
Yeah.
So this slide is about how this conversation got started. Nelson, these are your words, but if you're okay with my reading them,
Yeah,
this
okay.
is up on the slide. So the self-advocates heard about an issue with the Toronto Police Service in our community about police officers being disrespectful. And the self-advocates wanted to have a respectful conversation with the Toronto Police Service and have their voices heard in a real way. We also have a short video with a police officer that joined us at that talk, and it's starring Nelson himself, as well as a couple of other self-advocate members.
And he was very keen to talk to us from the beginning.
Exactly.
So we'll show the video now of the meeting that they had.
It's about 6 minutes.
Hi, I'm Shanika. I'm part of the Self-Advocate Council. I'm here with Nelson and Officer Petal, and we met at the meeting at the clubhouse where we had discussed about how we can make things better with the police and people with intellectual disability, how they can feel more comfortable with the police, and how they are just like people like me and you.
I'm Nelson, I'm part of the Self-Advocate Council. I've been here for a while. I've been a self-advocate for a number of years, and I hope this partnership with the Toronto Police we developed, I hope it continues, because society really needs this. We belong in society like everyone else.
Hi, I'm Jason Petal, Vulnerable Persons Coordinator for Toronto Police Service. Really happy to be part of this project with Community Living Self-Advocates Council, and indeed happy to be talking about the relationship that we've formed with the council. When I was first invited to come out and speak with the group, we heard from a number of people about some positive interactions, about some negative interactions with police. One of the conversations we had at our initial meeting was just kind of what pieces of advice, what guidance would people from the disabilities community at large give to police officers when interacting with us.
Yeah.
And the advice we got, and it's consistent with the advice we get universally, is just treat us with respect. Treat us the way you would anybody else. And I very much take that to heart, but would also add, as police officers, we are usually meeting you when things aren't going well, when emotions are high, when people are in crises, and at those moments, we can't always treat you like somebody else. There are sometimes communication challenges and things that we as police officers aren't necessarily accustomed to always dealing with. So it can actually be intimidating for us as police officers as well, and we sometimes have a hard time coming up with the best way to communicate. So we are kind of working within ourselves to find the best way to get through to you.
And sometimes I feel scared to talk to them. That's why we're doing this today, to make the bridge a lot easier to cross.
I think police officers probably, after time, can lose perspective of what it's like to be standing in front of somebody in body armor and with various use of force options on our hips. So.
And some of us have a speech impediment, and some of us have this difficult speaking to authority figures because we're intimidated by them.
And certainly patience and trying to create a comfortable environment within to have an exchange is something that police would consider an optimal situation.
All I'm asking is to make us both comfortable so we can talk to each other like humans. It was fun, but first off, I would like to say it was a little intimidating, but I got used to it. Talking to them, because they're human, they all make mistakes.
When I first saw the 3 police officers, I was a little bit scared, but after spending like a couple hours with them, you got to see what kind of person they are. They're really kind and gentle, and they really want to protect us and to protect our community. And they want to learn how to train and how to have better skills to talk to people with intellectual disability.
in having this opportunity to speak to the community, I want to assure you that, again, we're hearing the message that we're getting, and we will continue to strive to get better at what we do. I do want to touch on some of the efforts that we're recently and currently working on, with the goal of becoming as good as we can and learning to treat everybody with dignity and respect. It's an ongoing educational endeavor for us. Every officer in our service annually takes part in a 3-day, I guess it would be 24 hours of training. A great deal of that currently is focused on interacting with people in crisis, people with mental illness, people with the full spectrum of disabilities are covered. De-escalation and just kind of general sensitivity training is very prominent in our training currently. And if I might say so, I think it's actually well put together. And it is that 3-day training that the sergeant from the college that attended the meeting with us last time is working on putting together for next year. So it's the Self Advocates Council are directly impacting our training for next year. The training that our police officers receive is being directly impacted by the council and by the relationship that we formed.
The more we spend time with police officers, I feel more comfortable, and my community feel more comfortable.
All right, so thanks for sticking around for that video. We have a few more things we'd like to talk about, mostly just the background of this conversation and what the self-advocates let the Toronto police officers who attended know. So the self-advocates came up with a few things that they wanted the police officers to know, and Nelson, I think you can speak to that a little bit more.
We wanted to know, treat us like human beings, don't treat us like circus animals, and treat us with a little bit of respect. All of us have different disabilities, and you have to learn to adapt to the situation and the disabilities that the person might have.
So we talked a lot about communication, communication styles, different ways that people that are labeled with an intellectual disability might communicate. So that was a big part of.
And we might talk loud like this, and we don't mean any harm.
Right.
So this is a really beautiful quote from Peter Park. And Nelson, can you explain who Peter Park is a little bit before I read this quote?
Peter Park is the founder of People First. He decided to start People First for people like us to have a voice, because it's got, like me, he's a tired self-advocate, and I love this job. Don't get me wrong, but it's time knocking on the door all the time. But we get through.
And a big tenet of the People First is nothing about us without us. So I think that's a really good, way to kind of sum up what we're doing with the police and with the Self Advocates Council. That we're not just going and having a meeting ourselves, we're involving the Self Advocates Council as well.
And Peter Park always really beautifully illustrates the history of issues. So he talks about our right to live in community used to be taken away. We used to be locked up in institutions. Now we are living in the community. All people should be treated with respect.
And the same kindness like everyone else.
This was all you, Nelson. So this was about specifically talking about disability advocacy with the Toronto police officers and about not judging a book by its cover.
Yeah. And most people judge us by looking at us. And I'm saying here today, don't judge a book by its cover. We may surprise you.
You constantly surprise me. This was a really central belief that the Self-Advocates Council wanted to bring to their talk with the Toronto police officers. There were a lot of questions asked of the officers, but this was sort of the thread behind everything that was communicated. And Tara, do you want to read this slide?
Sure, yeah. So we believe all community helping professionals should get regular and ongoing training about the intellectual disabilities, about intellectual disabilities, and treat people fairly.
And all disabilities in general.
Right. And so a big part of the ongoing training piece is that the self-advocates are now directly involved with the Toronto Police Service in implementing some parts of their curriculum.
Yeah, changes to the program they use because societies keep changing and it keeps evolving with the different disabilities and physical disabilities.
Right. So they're going to be including some things in their curriculum that they didn't have before, which is a really good thing that came out of the meeting, that continuation of the partnership.
And trust me, if it doesn't continue, I would be there myself, make sure it continues.
Yeah.
Ongoing is the key word here, yes, for sure. Well, we talked a little bit about communication being one of the biggest barriers for people with developmental and other disabilities. Nelson, you had some pretty interesting insights, I think.
And some people like us talk more faster than others, and we talk more loudly than others, and we have a speech impediment, and sometimes we don't use our voice at all. Sometimes we use hand gestures, sometimes we use sign language, and all that jazz.
Yeah, so we wanted to remind the police officers that just because somebody maybe isn't following a command that you're giving them,
It doesn't mean we don't. It doesn't mean we don't understand them. But take us. All we have to say about that one. Give us a little bit of time. We gonna meet you down the street.
yeah, don't assume that people are being defiant if they're not responding right away.
So a big piece of advice that was given to the Toronto police officers was ask the person what is the best way to help you.
Yeah. And if you don't ask the person, sometimes they clammy, sometimes they clam up because they don't understand you, and they're nervous to speak to you.
And the big part was not misinterpreting that as someone being defiant, right? Yeah.
And don't assume we don't want to help you. It take us time to get down.
Okay. Well, we're good for time, I think.
Yeah, it's noon, so
Excellent. We
Yeah.
have a few discussion questions.
Any questions for us?
Well, Nelson, we had some questions for you, actually.
Yeah.
And then we can open it up to the audience, maybe.
What questions do you have?
put me on the spot.
You've heard them before, but it was, do you think that your opinion of the Toronto Police Service changed since our talks? Did it stay the same?
Well, yes and no. Yes, and I'm trying to break down the barriers like other self-advocates, but it's gonna take some time to get the point across.
Yeah.
Rome wasn't built in a day.
Rome wasn't built in a day.
What does Peter Park say all the time? Real change takes a real long time. Something along those lines. So that's a good quote to use.
Yeah, I mean, this is still new. This is brand new, really. We met in June. Yeah.
And then the Toronto Police Department is excited, so am I. I hope it continues. Because we, as self-advocates, I think we broke down the barrier. I think they're excited to meet us halfway, and for myself, I'm excited to meet them halfway. If they're willing to do that, I'm willing to do that.
Great.
I have one more question for you, Nelson. You still got your voice? Okay. In your dream world, what is the best outcome to come out of this discussion with the Toronto police
My
officers?
dream world is to treat us with fairness and respect and dignity, and help us make society better for all of us.
Great answer. Awesome. Want to ask some questions, Nelson?
And you have any questions for us in the panel?
Don't be shy.
Yes?
I'm just wondering, it sounds like you had. Thank you. I'm just wondering, it sounds like you had a great deal of success meeting with the Toronto Police and
Yes,
really
we
breaking down
have.
those barriers.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering if there's any other groups that you want to reach out to do some more advocacy work with, whether it's the provincial government or different.
Let me start by saying this. Let us do this with the Toronto Police Department first. That's the biggest bureau we have right now. And let's see if this continues to other branches. I hope it continues to other branches.
I think we started kind of small, but that was important to keep your voices front and center, but I'm sure other self-advocate groups and government.
Yeah, and we're also working with Yona Lensky at CAMH to do some mental health research projects. So that's something that's going on as well. I'm trying to think of who else we're involved with in the community. Do you think of anybody else, Nelson?
We involved with
Arch Disability Law Center, yep, so that's another partnership that the Self-Advocates Council has. Trying to think of any others. I don't know.
and that's basically it for now, because we're trying something new with the Toronto Police Department, and I hope it sticks.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, Nelson, that we talked about, like, if we're gonna do this, we want to do it right.
Yeah.
And our thought was that we didn't want to overload the council with a bunch of different projects and partnerships, and just really focus on the ones that they felt mattered
One
the most.
step at a time.
Right.
Like I said, one wasn't built in a day.
That's right. Yep. Any other questions? Does anybody have any comments? Anything you want to? We'll bring you a microphone, okay? There you go.
So, I couldn't live, but what is that? Is it all about?
What exactly is?
It's all about I couldn't live.
Oh, you came in late, so what is this all about? Okay, we'll give you a really, really quick wrap-up of what it's all about. Nelson?
We're in the process of talking to Toronto Police Department to treat us with dignity and respect and all sorts of disabilities.
And you're welcome to talk to us after if you like. Absolutely. You're welcome.
Any other questions you have for the panel? We're more happy to answer for you.
And I know sometimes people don't like to ask questions in a crowd, so feel free to find me or Tara or Nelson. We'll be around and we're happy to chat more about this.
Another thing that I just thought of is if anybody is interested in learning more about the Self-Advocates Council and what we do, you can always ask Michelle or I or Nelson.
Or myself, we're gonna be around all day.
Right, and we can provide you with email addresses that you can connect with us in case you're having any other questions and you need some information. Nelson, are you okay with having your information, like if someone asks for your email?
Yeah, I prefer face-to-face though.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Okay.
you.
That's it. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Nelson.
Enjoy the rest of your days.